news, transfer news, match previews, legend interviews, Spurs women, press conferences, covering everything Tottenham and England.
Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another edition of the Spurs Chat Podcast. There is now 23 days left of the summer transfer window and Tottenham have a lot to do. This is another edition of the viewers, listeners, questions and comments, and we have had thousands in this week. So thank you so much for all of your support. Thank you for leaving your comments and your questions for these future podcasts. It is really, really great to have you on board. We are live on YouTube at the moment. We're live on X and on Facebook, so please do get involved. Put your comments in, leave us some questions, and I'll be chatting to channel regular Spurs fan Melvyn all the way from Malta. Melvyn, how are you this evening?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Chris. Been looking forward to this, conversation because me, I love talking about Spurs, and it's exciting times, interesting times, and yeah, I'm looking forward to the new season, and I'm waiting for it to kick off, and really excited for 2024, 2025.
I've got to say, Melvyn, off air, you said to me, so what are we talking about tonight? And I said, it is not about what we want to talk about. It is about what the viewers want to talk about. It's about what the listeners want to talk about. And that is exactly where we are. We have no script for this whatsoever. We are going off the questions and the comments. And I'm going to get straight into this. Patrick Gleeson says here, Dominic Solanke fits Angie's system. He will do well at Spurs. This and that have written, Ange out. If we sign Solanke, I've had enough of these dross attackers. Melvyn, let's start by talking about Dominic Solanke because, of course, earlier this morning, Fabrizio Romano stated that Spurs are pushing to sign Dominic Solanke from Bournemouth. It has been reported that he has a release clause of £65 million. How are you feeling about this one?
I've always said when we spoke earlier this month and last month, and that I'm confident and like quietly calm about the transfer window, because I feel the club understands the profile of the player that we need. And even all the players we've been linked with in the striker position, I think all four of them would do. We've mentioned all the names. So Solanke for me, 21 goals last season. I mean, you know me. I only watch Tottenham. I don't watch many other clubs. So I follow Spurs religiously, and I don't miss a game. I don't think I've missed a game in the last 15 years. So I wouldn't have seen much of him. But you look at his videos and his goals and his physique, his stature, his strength, and the way he would fit into this team. I mean, there's an interview with Postecoglou which keeps coming back into my mind where he said there's not the biggest gap between quality if the character and the mentality is right. So you have to think we're not building a one-man team. We're not going to buy, let's say, Osimhen for 100 million and be the Osimhen team. We're going to build a squad that works well together, that fights together. And I feel that's the direction that the club is going. And Solanke is English, Prem proven, which is something we cry out for, and is capable of staying fit. I mean, his numbers have been really good. And you look at his stats, they're not the best, but in the attributes that Postecoglou needs, with pressing, strength, aerial ability, his body can hold up to a 38 calendar year. He can play all the games. I mean, it's something we need. It's something we struggled with last season with injuries, which is something I'm sure we're going to discuss. I mean, we need bodies in. The only thing I don't agree with is selling Richarlison to fund Solanke. I feel that it should be Richarlison and Solanke together.
Yeah,
I think we need them both. I don't think it should be one or the other. And that's where I feel I have the problem with the club. I don't agree with that direction. Maybe perhaps they think if they sell Richarlison, they can recoup the fund because he's not the long-term player. He's not right for the project. If that's the way they want to go, then okay, I agree. Sell him now, recoup 40, 50 million, whatever you can get from Saudi, and we go again. So from that aspect, I'm all in favor of the signing. Why would I be against a Premier League proven player? I know he's had poor seasons before, but he's only 26. I mean, 26 is not an old age for a striker. He's just arriving into his prime, you can say.
Melvyn, Stephen Dyer writes here, thinks Solanke should be given a chance. Ben Ibsen writes here, if Solanke was first choice, we would have bid ages ago. Is there not a part of you that feels like that? If he was number one on the list, if he was Angie's first choice, then surely this would have been done quite a time ago.
I think maybe in the future it will come out who was the first choice, or maybe he was the first choice from Postecoglou, and maybe Levy and Lang wanted to explore other directions. We don't know. And also, let's say the fans want Gyökeres, for example, and we buy him. You're not certain that he's going to come into the Premier League and score 20 goals. I mean, everybody wanted Ndombele. And remember, in the summer of 2018 or 2019, I think it was, everyone wanted Ndombele. Everyone saw the highlight clips. He was, being linked with Manchester City, and we got him, and it didn't work out. So it's not all players that are hyped up to be arrive at the club and are capable of producing. So for me, he's been at, I believe, Chelsea and Liverpool, so he knows what it's like to be at a club that must win every single week. I don't think he has that kind of pressure at Bournemouth. So he's going to arrive at a club where Postecoglou is going to put that pressure on him. You have to score every week. He's trying to change the mentality and the philosophy of the club. He's trying to create a winning culture, and maybe Postecoglou sees this in Solanke. We don't know. At this point, we can only, speculate and talk. But it's a lot of things that I trust the club. Like last season, when I trusted them with Vicario and Van de Ven, when we all wanted David Raya and we all wanted Tapsoba. And I don't think any Tottenham fan would go back on those decisions and say they were wrong, because Van de Ven is an excellent defender and Vicario's been an excellent goalkeeper.
Well, in a comment here from Jack, the squad needs real depth in quality. If Richarlison was to go out the door to the Saudi League and Solanke comes in, with the amount of players that have gone out the door, and I know that we'll talk about this, I've no doubt we'll talk about this, the amount of outgoings. Of course, Feliz has gone out on loan to Espanyol today for the whole season. Are you worried about the depth? Because even the likes of Fabrizio Romano has stated that we will probably get 2 or 3 players in. With the amount of players that have gone out the door, and full credit to the club, by the way, for getting a number of these deals done. And it looks highly likely that Emerson Royale will eventually get his move to AC Milan. Apparently now it's going to take a few more days. But are you worried about the depth again, especially in that final third, especially in that number 9 position? Because if Solanke does come in and Richarlison does go out, I'm with you, and I'm with a lot of other Spurs fans, that we need both, and we need to have at least 2 options as a number 9.
Yeah, the issue is, let's say we do get Solanke over the line, and let's say we do get a right winger, let's say Neto, for example, and let's say both are injured, and we're back to the same lineup we were last season. So it's like, what's the point if we need to get players in? But at the same time, let's say this season we're not in the Champions League, so we're in the Europa League. So you get to think, I think we can agree we're in the beginning of a project under Postecoglou. I mean, it's the second season, and you'd like to think we are further along where we are, but I think the squad required like major surgery, like you're seeing, lots of players going out, and you cannot replace them, I think, in one window. You cannot do it in 2. You can't do it in 3. I think to find the right player, even every transfer window, we get 4 or 5 in, but from 4 or 5, how many of them are really the key pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. Only one or two, realistically. So every single window, it seems that the club is buying one for the future, one for the now, and maybe sometimes one in between. You know what I mean? So we have brought players in who I'm excited about and can do a role for us. But it's a bit frightening to think if we have a couple of injuries, we're back to square one. I mean, yes, we brought in Rado Dragozin, which is great cover for the back line. We didn't have him in the beginning of last season, and it's great we have him now. He settled in. We bought Lucas Bergvall, who looks like he's ready for the Premier League, in my opinion. So that's another signing that we didn't have last season. I mean, Archie Gray also looks good, and looks like he can be a player for the now. I feel we need to do more, but I think I've said this phrase many, many times. I think the club is acting with one hand tied behind their back. Why? Because we had to move on 8 or 9 players, and we've had to we recouped pennies for what we paid for them.
But Melvyn, the only thing I would say on that, it seems that a lot of managers, whenever we've needed 2, 3, 4 players to complete the jigsaw and really challenge for trophies, including the Premier League, they haven't quite got those players that they've needed. Ange Postecoglou has spoken so many times in the last 12 months about not interested in 4th, 5th, 3rd, 2nd, whatever. He wants to be number 1. At the start of the window, if we were doing this podcast and I said to you, okay, if we want to be Premier League title contenders, we're going to go out and sign Dominic Solanke, what would you have said?
Well, I would probably have the same reaction when being told Postecoglou was going to be our manager. You know, in the beginning, I was probably saying, who the hell is this guy? You know, why are we going after him? And then you look deeper and you try to analyze and you try to think, if you take the fee out of it, because I think that's the only problem with Spurs fan at the moment. They're thinking we're overpaying for this player, because it's a player. He wasn't high on our list, but he could be a player that probably would outperform every single player on that list.
Well, so, Melvyn, let's take a couple of these comments. That Spursy guy on screen now, it says, is Solanke an improvement on Richarlison? That is one argument. I'll ask you that question in a second. Mandel NT says, Solanke, really, we had Harry Kane. And Squiggle writes, I love the comments on this channel. Back the manager, but not that one.
It makes me laugh when we say, oh, buy Premier League proven, buy a striker, buy this, buy that, and then when we buy someone, we say, oh, not that one, don't buy that one. Don't get me wrong, most of the time I've been on the same boat, thinking we shouldn't go for that player, we shouldn't go for that one, but the club ends up buying them. But at the same time, you don't know. In football, you never know what's going to happen until the guy is holding the shirt. And it's a lot of ifs, buts, and maybe. And we'll see if he's in, because we don't even know if the club is going to be able to buy him. This is why I hate seeing videos of players before they're signed. And I've stopped doing that about 3 years ago. And this is the first player I actually went back, because I knew I was going to be speaking to you today. I usually don't watch any of the videos before we sign the player, because when you're dealing with Daniel Levy and Spurs, there tends to be hiccups. So let's say Bournemouth want the 65 million up front, and Daniel Levy doesn't want to do that deal, and then he'll go back for a different striker, let's say Jonathan David. So we've done this before. Daniel Levy has done this before. We've had a podcast once, me, you, I believe Craig, and maybe Gary Maloney, and we were talking about Antonio Conte for about 3 hours, and then it came out live that Fabrizio Romano said it's over. I don't know if you remember that, because they had conversations, and then later on we ended up getting Nuno. So it's not always what the fans want. What the fans want, let's say all the fans wanted Antonio Conte. Look how that worked out. Sometimes what the fans want is not the right thing for the football club. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to defend the decision to buy Solanke, but me sitting here, I cannot tell you if it's the right or wrong decision. It has to be taken by footballing people. Yes, we watch the games and we all say we know, we're quite knowledgeable about football, and it's a quite educated guess and opinion. But until he's wearing the shirt and he's on the pitch playing for us, you don't know for certain if he's gonna be shit or if he's gonna be, really good and outperform what he did last season. I mean, he could either come to us and score 8 goals, or he could come and score 28, 29 in an attacking side. Either of these things are a possibility.
It's very fair to say he had a very, very good season last season at Bournemouth. And let's face it, they weren't one of the top teams in the league. So to score that many goals, 19 Premier League goals in 38 games, excellent at pressing as well. Those are certainly his strengths. Vincent Mahorn says here, way overpriced, not Champions League standard. Melvyn, in European competition, I know, of course, this coming season we're playing in the Europa League, but when you think of where Spurs want to be in the Champions League, if I'd have said to you about Dominic Solanke playing in a Champions League team, doing it, in the Champions League, what are your thoughts on that? Do you feel confident? Do you feel like he can have another great season in this team? Because, a player like that, we've had a couple of Bournemouth podcasts on in the last couple of days, and they've given great insights into Dominic Solanke. And one of them turned around and said that if you're whipping balls in, if the likes of Heung-min Son and Kulusevski and Brennan Johnson and co are whipping balls in, and Dominic Solanke is getting on the end of them, then he will score a hatful of goals. One of the podcasts says that he lashes too much at the ball, but that's him playing with a lot of confidence at the moment, the way he's been scoring. But talking about Vincent's comment, not Champions League standard, is that harsh?
Well, we're not in the Champions League, are we? Simple as
that. Not yet.
Yeah, we're not yet. But you don't. Let's say, can we all agree we're in the beginning phases of a project? We can all agree that. Let's say we're in the second season under Postecoglou, and if you think, I'm only 30 years old. I'm 31. I was 31 on Sunday. I've only seen the best sides under Tottenham were under Pochettino in the last season of the Lane. The year we got to the Champions League final, and under Harry Redknapp. So those are the best 3 sides I've seen with Spurs. Best football, and probably the best performing. Yes, we didn't win the Champions League final, but my point is, if you look at those squads that we assembled and you take every single signing that we made, it took, and I looked into this today because I thought of this, it took 8 transfer windows to create the squad that made it to the Champions League final. It took equally as many transfer windows that made us lift the League Cup. It took 8 transfer windows as well. So to create winning sides, it takes long. It doesn't take 2 transfer windows. This project under Postecoglou, we're still fixing the mistakes we did under Pochettino. We're still suffering from how many days we went without signing a player. We still haven't caught up. We're still struggling because of that. So it takes time. These things takes time. And to create a winning side. So for the Champions League, this year we're in the Europa League. So in my opinion, we're not in a position to buy Champions League ready players. Yes, we have the funds, we have the stadium, we have the facilities. But where we are in the project, I don't think, let's say you have the best side we can create is a big jigsaw puzzle. I don't think we have, many pieces put together. We only have a couple of corner pieces. You think how many world-class players do you need to win? You need a few.
No, I get all that.
In my opinion, we only have 2 world-class players, who is Son and Cuti Romero. We only have 2 Champions League ready players. We only have 2, and maybe you can count Kulusevski and Bentancur. The rest hardly have any Champions League experience. And yes, a year in the Europa League. I wanted Champions League football, but when we were, we didn't make it. I was thinking a year in the Europa League is not bad, and it delays, not delays, it prolongs the project for another year. So we will be more Champions League ready with another transfer. We would have had a 3rd transfer window. I know we're talking about this one, but I just feel the club is not ready for marquee signings. If you look at Arsenal, they spent 4 or 5 transfers.
Melvyn, I'm not going on about marquee signings. My worry at the moment is about the depth. We saw last season on a number of occasions, we have an injury to a key player. In that Chelsea game, after 10 matches, it derailed our season. We had injuries to key players. Now, I'm talking about the depth. Now, when you look at the depth that we had, the only depth we had was players like Pierre-Emile Højbjerg on the bench. Emerson Royal fitted in across the whole of the back 4 throughout last season. That's the depth. Now, we've got rid of the depth. We're getting rid of that depth.
Yeah, but
so as far as planning for that depth, how do you think that's going to go in the next 23 days?
Yeah, but I'd rather give Bergvall Højbjerg's minutes or Archie Gray, and I'd rather give Jet Spence the minutes that Emerson Royal played, who are players capable enough for filling in. And these guys are going to be ones for the future. So I'd rather give them the minutes. And when you think we have a squad enough that's good enough to compete in the Premier League, and we have a squad enough and reserves to fill in the Europa League. I mean, we're one of the highest in the coefficient for the Europa League. I think one of the biggest teams is Manchester United, Fiorentina, and there's not much else. I know it's going to be difficult because European games are quite tough, but I think we're more than capable of filling in a team and even rotating. I'm interested to see which players he's going to keep from let's say the ones that have been on tour. I don't know which ones are going to be loaned out and which ones he's going to keep. Personally, I think some of them are ready, but I think the ones we will fill in with Premier League ready talent. So they're talking about maybe 2 more ins, so a winger and a striker. So let's say we get them to win. So we have to fill in the rest with either the under 21s or the guys that went on tour. The problem is everyone, including myself to a certain extent, want ready-made players for the Premier League. The kind of like how Madison was when we bought Madison last season. Madison was ready for the Premier League. Van de Ven was the same. So we want players to be ready now. We don't want to wait. But they are expensive. They are 60 million these days, 65 million. I mean, Solanke 15 years ago would have been 8 million. We wouldn't have been 65. But these are the prices of the Premier League. These are because we have the major TV deals. These are because we have major money from coming into the Premier League from owners. These are inflated prices. That's why we have to pay 65 million for Solanke.
I get the fact that all of us need to be patient under this manager. However, I think that Ange Postecoglou needs backing in this window, and I am a little bit disappointed at the fact that we haven't got signings in early. And you can tell that Ange Postecoglou is disappointed with that as well, because he wants the players in early. For a manager, the ideal situation is for those players to go on pre-season to Japan and South Korea for those pre-season games and get the benefit out of the pre-season training that he provides. And I'm just absolutely baffled why we haven't signed a striker yet. I don't think you need to be Einstein or even a Spurs fan to see that we need a striker. We need depth in that area as well. Personally for me, I don't want to see Heung-min Son playing through the middle, because I think that he's so much more effective on the left-hand side. And, I'm not Richarlison's biggest fan because I think that he is very wasteful. But for now, we're hearing stories that he's going to go out of the door if Solanke comes in. Imagine after a month, Solanke picks up an injury and is out for 2 or 3 months. Then what? Son goes through the middle again. We're in exactly the same position as what we were last year. I get the fact that we have got these young, exciting prospects in for the future. That is very, very exciting for the future. But it's now that I worry about. It's for now. And I feel like we need to have learned our lesson on last season with the situation that we had. Jason writes on screen now, what about Eze? The Times newspaper have given a very intense situation on the transfer window today. They have stated that Tottenham like Eze, but they don't wish to meet Crystal Palace's £60 million release clause for Eze in one lump sum. Apparently Spurs perhaps would have got the deal done had it not been in one lump sum. So it doesn't look like that one is going to go ahead. During Ange Postecoglou's time at Spurs, apparently Tottenham have looked at Solanke, Tony, Openda, David, Orban, and Gyökeres. Melvyn, let's talk about those targets. Of all those players that I've mentioned, can I ask you first of all, are you surprised that now we're on the 7th of August and we haven't signed a striker?
Yes, to be honest, yeah, I am. It's in a way disappointing that the club keeps doing this kind of thing. I mean, surely they must have learned by now. But at the same time, you either say you have another month to get the signing correct, and I think we've done this mistake before where we rush or it's a panic buy and we don't get it right, and we're stuck with the player for a number of years. So a part of me thinks it's better to not have him maybe for the first Premier League game and get the signing right, because it needs to be the correct decision, and it needs to be. I know we just want the club to make the correct decision and buy the right player, and think about this, because if you rush and you pay 65 million for whoever and you get it wrong, this could derail your project. Let's say next year we finish 5th again. Do you think we've made any progress then? You know what I mean? You need to get into
It's also about the teams above, and it's also about the teams below doing business. Look at West Ham. Look at Aston Villa.
Yeah, but you have to think the caliber of the player that's coming in, and some of them are. I think the striker that West Ham signed is only 32. So you have to think, is he going to fit into the project? Do we have a good 4, 5, 6 years with this player? Yes. And most of the players we've signed are quite young, and you can easily say they're going to be here for the next 8, 9 years, easily. If they keep their level, if they keep performing, if they improve from year to year, they can easily stay at the club for a long, long time. And that's the key to building a project. A successful project is to build from year to year and improve constantly and keep adding key pieces to your jigsaw puzzle in a way. So if Solanke comes in and gives us 2-3 good seasons and gets us into the Champions League, and it becomes one of the key figures in the club and in our attack, we can complement Solanke by adding more strikers to that front line. I mean, most European clubs have 2-3 players up front. And the way Postecoglou wants to play, he wants them to be more versatile. So you can definitely. And another thing we didn't mention is we're not sure where Kulusevski is going to fit into all of this, because I know he's been playing as a striker, and he's been trying to make us forget that last season he played Son in the middle because we didn't have Richarlison. So he's like trying to get away from that again and tell us Son is he's a left wing, he's better on the left. But we've not forgotten that you played him there last season when we didn't have anyone. So we want to be in a position where we don't have to go back to that, because we know we should have learned from that Son is better on the left, and we need enough cover for the entire season where we don't have to fall back on that again.
Melvyn, I feel like putting Kulusevski through the middle, I just feel like in some ways we're just making do with what we've got. And I feel like a club like Spurs, we shouldn't have to just settle for making do with what we've got. We should be going out, identifying the right targets. And it is fair to say I've been so complimentary in the last 12 months, 2 years on Tottenham's recruitment, because, you know, it has been criticised so heavily in recent years with Tottenham recruiting players that haven't been the ones. But recently, the recruitment has been excellent. And I think a lot of us expected that to happen again in this transfer window. I know there's 23 days left. Spurs could turn it around and we could sign a hatful of players and we will all be happy in 23 days' time. We'll wait and see. Beast of TH says here, Melvyn is a legend, always positive. Can you ask him if we're still going to win the league in 2 years?
We're capable of. I mean, we're, like I said before, we're in the midst of a project. If we continue like we are with the recruitment and adding to this team, and I was going to get to this, by the end of this season, we will know if Kulusevski has a future, if Bentancur has a future, if Maddison has a future, if Bissouma has a future, if Dragusin has a future, if I think those are the players, in my opinion, who are, if Richarlison has a future, if we don't sell him. There's some players that would
you be disappointed if Richarlison went out the door?
I would be, because I like the player. I like what he's about. And I think it's a shame that he has these injury problems. I mean, I'm a fan of Richarlison, I always said. And I think last season we played better with him than we did without him. And
so who's the better player, Solanke or Richarlison?
No, I would drive Richarlison to the airport if we get Solanke. I mean, I prefer. It's simple. I mean, for the team, you need a player that's available. It's the same reason I give you for Giovanni Lo Celso. I mean, he's a great football player, but he only gives you 3 games a season, 4 games a season. I mean, it's, if you can't play, what's the point of having you at the club? So I like Richarlison when he plays. I mean, last season, even at the end, he came in and he was impactful against Liverpool, against Arsenal. You could see that he offers something in the box which we didn't have. And if we bring in Solanke, then you think, okay, then you can go. You know what? You can go. Let's recoup the money we paid for you and invest it somewhere else. If we keep him, then I think, okay, good. We have cover in the Europa League. We have a great substitution. We have, you know, in a way, a comedian, because I just find him funny. I mean, he was injured on the tour and he was lifting the cup, and I just think
I'd find him funnier if he actually scored a few goals.
He did score last season, Chris. I think if we didn't have Richarlison last season, we would have finished 9th and we wouldn't even have European football.
He's so wasteful in front of goal, though, Melvyn. So wasteful.
He is. I'm not going to lie with you. He is, but I think he makes up for it at times. And I just think if Solanke had the minutes Richarlison had, he would have had more goals. And if he plays in our side, an attacking team, he will have more goals. If he plays with our style of football, counter-attacking football, Solanke will produce more goals. So I'm in favor of buying the player. I think at this point, I'm in favor of any striker you just mentioned. So we just need them to come into the club and start learning the system. Because the good thing we have this season is we'll have lots of games. So something we didn't have last season is repetition. I don't think our team has learned how to win yet. It's like we're still trying to piece it together. I mean, we have one pattern of play which works really, really well, and it's like when you learn. Let's say, I don't know if you remember this game on PlayStation where they fight. It's called Tekken. It's like you keep pressing the same button and we keep doing the same attack. It's like we've learned nothing else. That's all we know. Get it to the byline, cut it back. And it works effectively. And sometimes, let's say, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, it's like it's on Postecoglou to fix it. And sometimes you think we don't have the personnel for it. So until we have the personnel for it to properly change it in the game, so when we're struggling to score, you can bring in quality. I still think, and to answer that guy's question who said, do you think we'll win the league in 2 years? I'll definitely think we'll win a trophy.
He asked you that because I think you said on a previous podcast that you believe that Spurs will win the Premier League in 2 years. But you're like some of the other comments have said, you're always very positive about the club, and me and you talk a lot, and we always think that we're going to win trophies. But when I look at this squad, Melvyn, I feel like we've got a long way to go before we are going to be title contenders or be lifting trophies anytime soon. Franco writes here, Chris, do you consider players who are injured more often than not to be strength in depth? What's the point of Neto? Do you know what? I like Pedro Neto as a footballer. I think he's absolutely fantastic, got great ability. However, his injury record is so poor. I wouldn't actually sign Pedro Neto if I had my choice, purely for that fact, because as Melvyn just said about Giovanni Lo Celso, some players sometimes they just are very unlucky with injuries, and Pedro Neto is one of those players. We had Dazzling Dave, the Always Wolves Fan TV. We posted a video yesterday, and actually Dave said, we've had him for 5 years, and he's been out 50% of the time. So that is not going to be strength in depth 100% if you've got a player out injured all the time. Melvyn, talking about players being out injured, of course, last summer we signed Manor Solomon. He's been out for such a long time. There is reports today from the Times and the Telegraph stating that they believe that he's going to go out on loan this summer. Would you be surprised by that?
You know what? I'm happy that the club is doing this kind of thing. I mean, there's a bit of ruthlessness. They're more.
But where's our depth?
That's true. But at the same time, I think where we are, just fill in the gaps with the academy kids that are coming up that played on the tour. So if we need depth,
you're happy to give that pressure to the guys in the academy. Fair play. They have taken their opportunity during pre-season. I hope that they get a lot of game time. But is it too much game time? And is it putting too much pressure on them when a lot of them haven't even had Premier League minutes?
I would keep them till January, most of them. Where, let's say, I would keep them for the League Cup, for the Europa League, and fill in where I need to and play them. I mean, remember Pochettino's first season, we used to play Nabil Bentaleb, Ryan Mason, Andros Townsend, Carroll. We used to play Kyle Norton. And then we saw which ones were still good enough to stay. Harry Kane. And they use the minutes where the Europa League is a bit more forgiving than the Premier League. And it's an experience to play them. I think maybe some of them are not ready. I don't know what they've done in training or what the manager sees. But if you play them, it's better than, let's say, we kept Højbjerg for another season and gave him minutes. I prefer to see the youth play and it's something I can get more excited about. I think I get excited when you see, one of our own playing, and it's a boring game, but we have the kids playing, so the game's more exciting, because if we win with them, it you know what I mean? When I saw Harry Kane start with Spurs, and I used to tell my dad in the early days, like, we're relying on Harry Kane. That's how sad it's become here.
But there should be that fine mix, Melvyn. That should be that fine mix of experienced players coming in the door, plus giving the youth a chance as well. And I really, really stand by that. I feel like there has to be that fine mix. And I don't think there is any excuses at the moment why we're not getting business done in these areas. Soup Dragon writes here, we could play with a false number 9. Manchester City won the league doing it the season after Aguero left. I just think of Ange Postecoglou saying now, just copying Pep, mate. Melvyn, another report from the Times today. They are stating, as well as Tottenham wanting a striker and a winger in the next 23 days, Spurs also want to sign a left back. So if Spurs did get 3 signings over the line in the next 23 days, a striker, a winger and a left back, you personally as a Tottenham fan, would you be happy?
Yeah, I think I would be happy even if we don't get the left back. I think Spence can cover both sides. And if you need, even Archie Gray can cover right back, and you can play Spence left.
You're easy to please. You are. Most people I've done these chats with, they're reeling off the lists of players they want.
Because I also think if you use the youth players, and let's say this window we don't have the money to buy 3 players that are, let's say, Champions League ready, but you can buy 2 and you can use one of the youth to cover that position. Next season will be another opportunity to buy players. So, and I know how Daniel Levy works. He's going to say, oh, why would I buy another left back if we have Udogie and we have this new guy? And let's say the second option is not good enough. And in one season, oh, I'll give him a chance. It's like you're blocking that pathway for the youth. And let's say one of the youth players all of a sudden plays really, really well and does like Harry Kane. Harry Kane came into the team and never dropped out for another 10 years. It's a possibility. And I just think because we're not in the Champions League, because we're in the Europa League, I think we can delay certain signings. I mean, the striker is pivotal. I mean, I would spend all my money on one striker and keep Richarlison and think you could delay certain signings until you're in the Champions League. You have more money, you have a bigger budget, you've done more, data stuff. You could delay certain signings and you don't have to rush them. So if I think I have enough with Destiny Udogie and cover with Spence, I know it's a long season and I prefer to see what Spence can offer us because I'm excited about this player. Someone that, went on loan to Italy, came back and is all of a sudden impressing, all of a sudden doing the right things. I mean, I don't want this to be the transfer show. I know we're in the middle of the transfer window, but I want to talk about Tottenham Hotspur and the project of Tottenham Hotspur and where we're heading. It's not
Melvyn,
all about
that'll probably be another show. That'll probably be another show because this is all about the comments and questions that people want answering and talking about. It's all going to be about transfers because a lot of people are very worried about the transfer window at the moment. And I'll answer you on this because, if we signed a striker, a winger and a left back, I was expecting a lot more to happen in this transfer window.
Why?
And even
what positions do you think were still light? Or
Melvyn, how many times has Ange Postecoglou come out and said we want to be number 1? If you're going to be number 1, you are not going to be relying on your development players to come in and make that impact. I'm not the only one who thinks like this. Lee says here it's not good enough. Got to agree with Chris. Money needs to be spent. Money does need to be spent. Jack writes here, Melvyn is optimistic but not realistic. The current squad is lightweight. I don't think anyone can argue really that a couple of injuries again to this squad. Look what happened last season. A couple of injuries to this squad. It could derail us again. Do you not see that?
I do to a certain extent, but at the same time, I think we still nearly made the Champions League with the squad we had, and we've improved on the squad already.
But there are a lot of very poor teams last season, and they will all strengthen in the next 23 days, and they have strengthened already. Yeah. And let me ask you this as well, because Ange, during the tour to Japan and South Korea, he came out and said that he believes that the squad is stronger now than it was last season, and that's with the likes of Pierre-Emile Højbjerg going out the door. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, because we brought in Bergvall and Archie Gray, and we're going to have a much fitter, Rodrigo Bentancur. Rodrigo Bentancur had an ACL surgery, came back in January, and we were told he would be back to his peak fitness sometime.
But we're playing in Europe. We're playing in Europe as well that we weren't last season. And and hopefully we'll have more games in the FA Cup and the League Cup. Do you really think we've got enough depth at the moment? Even if we signed another 3 players, do you think we have got enough depth?
Yeah, I think we do. And I think there will always also be a plan for January. So I think we need game time. I know the games we see, we don't play as fluid as we like. We don't play the attacking brand Postecoglou wants us to play all the time. And I think the game time will help. These players need minutes. They need minutes on the pitch. I think the Premier League is not enough. They need the Europa League games to play and gel together, make mistakes, and learn how to win. Because I feel it's still a young squad. They're still a bit naive at times.
But Melvyn, Ange says he wants to be number 1. This is my point. He says he wants to be number 1. He says he wants to be putting trophies in the cabinet. You are not going to be doing that the way that we are doing it at the moment.
I'll tell you this. When Pep Guardiola went to City, did he win in his first season? No. Did Klopp? It took Klopp 4 seasons to win the Premier League. He finished 4th, 5th, or something like that. Arteta, I hate to say this, but if you look at their project, it's quite similar to ours. They had to take out lots of deadwood. They had many players on high wages in the first few seasons. And then they started to add key pieces to their project. And now they're consistently there and thereabouts. And that's where we need to be. And we're following. We didn't do the same mistakes they did. We did similar mistakes, but it takes time. We're still with one hand tied behind our back. We had to let go of 8 or 9 players this season. Imagine next season when we have, I think we shaved off 35 million in wages by the players we let go. We let go Eric Dyer, Perisic, and all these players. I know you want all the signings to come in this window, but I think where we are.
It's not just about this window. I believe that every single team needs to strengthen with key players that are going to have an impact on your starting 11 and your squad. Because what I look at the moment is who's coming off the bench and being that impact player when you've got the best starting 11 out there. And I tell you what, it's so interesting about opinions on our great club, because there's a comment here, Melvyn talking facts, and then Paul says this Melvyn don't get it. So it's funny, Melvyn, is it, that a lot of people will agree with you, a lot of people will disagree. Of course, our opinions are different, but we all want exactly the same thing. It's just how we get to it. I've never been one to say we must go out and spend hundreds of millions of pounds, because we have seen the likes of Mickey van der Ven, Vicario, Udogie. We've seen great players come in, and they've been impact players. I won't call them statement signings, because a lot of people who watch this and listen to it, a lot of people don't really like that term, statement signings. But impact players make a difference. And when you've seen, the first season at the club, like Vicario, Van der Ven, Udogie, they were absolutely superb, and that's what we need more of in the next 3 weeks or so. Melvyn, the Daily Telegraph reported today it's expected that Oliver Skipp will go out on loan, and all of the promoted sides are interested: Southampton, Ipswich and Leicester. What do you think will happen with Oliver Skipp? Because he is yet another one of our depth players, didn't get that much game time under Postecoglou. Would you expect that one to happen? Would you be disappointed or pleased if that happened?
If Oliver Skipp left, I'm going to answer my opinion, but I have a question to you, because you've watched Oli Skipp a lot, haven't you?
Yeah.
How many games have you say you've seen him? Over 50 games, for example.
Well, I've said to you on various occasions, I used to watch him play for the under-21s. He was 17 in that team, and I tell you what, he was by far the best player in the Spurs team. He was by far the best player on the pitch at 17 years old. And he was running the game, running the show, pinging balls all over the place. And then, of course, he played under the likes of Jose Mourinho, Antonio Conte. And then you saw him be a slightly different player, playing a lot of backward passes. And of course, he does get likened now to Harry Winks a lot. Personally, for me, if I was Oliver Skipp, I would want to move.
Yeah.
Although he's been at the club since he was a kid, loves the club, one of our own and all of that. If I was Oliver Skipp, I'd probably want to move on because I'd want game time. As a footballer, you'd always want game time. That should be the most important thing. It shouldn't be about money. It should always be about playing football and wanting to be successful and be in that starting 11 all of the time. That's not going to happen under Postecoglou. So I actually think that it would be a better move for him and the club that he does go on and play for somebody else. And Spurs, we've got, like you said, we've got Archie Gray, we've got Bergvall in, a couple of exciting talents who will and should get game time under Postecoglou. And like you also said, we've done extremely well on the outgoings, and it is about rebuilding the squad. And I completely get that. We are still rebuilding this squad, but that's even more so why I say it's so important to get a couple of additions in this window to progress us and show that ambition to taking us to that next step. Don't stand still.
But my question, and on the Oliver Skipp, I would personally do the same thing they did with Jack Clark, Marcus Edwards, and Troy Parrott. I would move on with a small percentage on the sell-on fee to protect yourself, let's say, or a buyback clause, because Skipp is capable of maturing and into a great footballer. I mean, you've said it many times, and when every single time someone mentions Oliver Skipp, I remember how you used to talk about him. And because I don't go to the games. I'm an international Spurs fan. I'm from Malta. I visit when I can. But you've seen these guys. You've seen them for a long time. And I think it's more, that's why I ask you the question, because it's like your opinion sometimes will be will have much more weight to it than mine. That's why I asked you about Skipp. So I would sell with a percentage or a buyback, something like that, to protect the club. So it's the best for the player to move on and protect the club with a buyback or a percentage on the sell-on fee.
With that, Melvyn, I suppose we could talk about Lo Celso, because I don't feel that Lo Celso is ever going to get that run of games. Forget the injury record. I just don't feel that he's going to get that run of games under Ange Postecoglou. And when you have a player, Højbjerg was another one, was never ever going to get that game time that he desperately wanted and felt that he deserved. Hence why he's gone out the door. If the manager doesn't want you and the manager is not going to use you for the majority of the time, surely as a professional footballer, that is going to be very, very frustrating. As I said, it's not about the money. It should never be about the money for me. And I say that as a fan. I know some people have said that, some footballers are happy just sitting there, getting the money and sitting on the bench and not playing. I will never in a million years understand that. So it should always be about playing. And I don't feel that Lo Celso is going to get that time under Ange. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think it was made clear last season when he wasn't playing in the end. I mean, Maddison was injured and he came back and he didn't play him. And then Maddison was poor. He had a poor game after poor game after poor game, and he still didn't play him. And Lo Celso had impactful moments, when he played. He played well against City, he scored. And you think, okay, maybe something's happening here, maybe, and he still didn't play him. So I think Postecoglou, when he gets it in his head that the player is not in his plans, that's it. You're gone. And the same thing happened to Reguilon, and luckily Jet Spence managed to, revitalize his career. He still hasn't done anything yet. It's still been pre-season, and it's going to be a long season. And hopefully, Jet doesn't do anything to get on his bad books. So with Gio, I think the club's been trying to be creative and include him in any deals. That's why I feel that they went in for Jacob Ramsey, tried to use him as part exchange. I feel that the club's been trying to get rid of him. They've been trying. They know Postecoglou doesn't want him. They know, he'll play one game or appear and be injured again. So might as well, get whatever money we can possibly recoup from him or use him in a part exchange.
Melvyn, a number of comments again about Dominic Solanke. Kate Rickson writes, sorry, I'm not overwhelmed with Solanke. Paul Clark says, why not keep Richarlison as a backup? Dirk Bogard says £60 million for a Liverpool reject. Neil Buckland says Solanke isn't necessarily what Ange Postecoglou wants. He just fits the homegrown brief, which we need to address. On Neil's point there, do you think that Ange Postecoglou wants Dominic Solanke? Or is this more of a club decision on Dominic Solanke? What do you think?
I think he said not multiple times, but I know he said once that he okays the final before a player is signed. I mean, when Timo Werner was signed, Lang went to him with the proposition, and he must have okayed it because we brought him back for another season. And I think Postecoglou mentioned something along the lines of, like, I take responsibility for these players, so that's why I have like the final say. He said something like that in an interview. I remember him. So I do think he approves the signing. He okays it, but I don't think he's the one that gives them a list. I think they give him a list, and he would be like, I approve these 5, for example, go for them, but I wouldn't go for them. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. So I don't think it's like he's telling them, I want one of these 5, go after them. I think there's a list, there's a meeting, and signings are pre-approved before the window starts.
Sean writes here, Chris asking where the experience is. Son, Maddison, Romero, Van der Ven, Porro, Vicario, plus players who we had 1 year, Udogi, Johnson, Werner, as pre-season. This is exactly my point. I think that if Spurs and Ange Postecoglou were to add another couple of good experienced players into this team, into this squad, we have a chance of achieving something. And it's not just me whinging and moaning saying we need signings. When our manager, our head coach, constantly comes out and says, I want to be number 1, then I think the club need to address by giving him the tools that he wants and needs at the football club. I know it has been a huge rebuild at the club. However, I feel like all of us are quite disappointed with the amount of signings that have come in, or particularly haven't come in as yet. And I feel like it is a big 23 days to go in the transfer window if Spurs want to achieve something next season. I've said this before on the Tottenham news videos and, of course, on the Spurs Chat podcast, that if Spurs want to just finish 5th or 6th, finish in the Europa League spot, then great. We've got the squad that we need. If we want to push on and be a Champions League team, or beyond that, actually try and win something, go on to be successful, then we need signings in. And that is just not me being a whinging fan saying we need signings, we need to go out and spend hundreds of millions of pounds. I'm saying the recruitment has been good recently, and that does need to continue in every single window. Melvyn, Jackie says here, we were told it would be a very busy week. Outgoings, yes, but what about the incomings? I know you said that you didn't want to turn this into a transfer show, but of course we have no control over the comments and the questions that come in. Are you expecting signings this week? Are you expecting incomings in the very near future?
Yeah, I messaged you earlier today and I told you, Chris, I really hope we sign someone before we start. Because I was thinking the feeling of the club and the fans was going to be like this. So yeah, I'm hoping we sign Solanke before Leicester, and I just think he will slot straight in. And maybe some people in the comments want to write who they think their line, what the lineup is going to be like, because I also think that could throw up some surprises. I mean, I've spoken to my brother and a couple other Spurs fans, and I said, what's the lineup for Leicester gonna be like? And every single person told me a different lineup. So if we can't together agree, I think it's gonna be kind of a surprise for all of us what it's gonna be like. Because when we signed Van der Ven, I think 2 days later, he was starting at Brentford. So if we sign Solanke and he's registered on time, he's just going to be put straight in, 100%. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of lineup we're going to produce and who's going to play, who's going to start, if Maddison is going to start, if it's going to be Bissouma. I think Bissouma, it's going to be a really important season for him. We haven't spoken about him a lot. If it's going to be Archie Gray or Bergvall, if it's going to be Sarr, it's going to be really interesting to see who starts. Who's going to start at left back? I think there's a massive question mark there. If he will ever play a back three, if he will ever play Van de Ven as left back, there's lots of uncertainties within the squad. Is Bentancur going to reach, his fitness, his peak fitness again? Is he going to be the Bentancur of before the ACL? Is Kulusevski going to be the goal scorer again? There's so many question marks for the season. I think we can talk for 3 hours if we want to, Chris, about this kind of stuff. And but there's a lot of question marks. And for me, I know you're talking about we need signings and we need players, but for me, things get me more excited discussing where players are going to fit into the system. We have players now. Who's going to start in midfield? You're talking about we don't have depth. We have in the middle, right? We have Bissouma, Bentancur, Sarr, Bergvall, Archie Gray at the club. That's 5, who are very strong players. And I think you can throw in, if he's not sold, let's say Lo Celso. I don't know if you want to mention Skip is still at the club. So who's going to be the starting 3? Like today at work, I got a little post-it note and I wrote down my starting lineup. I even think Kulusevski can be added within those Maddison, Kulusevski. That's 7 players for 3 positions. And yes, we need a winger, so we need the right winger, in my opinion, to cover Johnson, because I don't want to be playing Kulusevski on the right again. I don't think he's a winger. I think Kulusevski plays better centrally. And I think his flicks and his tricks, he's quite a bright player, and I like how he's performed in the preseason, and I want to see Kulusevski scoring again. So, in my opinion, I think he's, in a way, he can play the Maddison role. I know he's not played there a lot, but he can fill in my opinion, in that position. So I think we have enough players. On the left, we have Timo Werner and Son. And I think Son will play better if he's rested. And I think Pedro Porro suffered from this last season. He started brilliantly in the beginning. He played so well. He scored goals. He was energetic. I think his defensive side improved a lot, Pedro Porro. And you can see it in the preseason. His defensive side improved a lot. And if Jet Spence is good enough cover on the right, I think in the long term we will see an even better Pedro Porro, because if he's rested and if he's kept fresh for every single game, I think at the end of the season Pedro Porro looked really, really leggy and really, really tired and wasn't at his best. And I think if we keep, I get your point with the squad depth, and if we get the 3 players that they're saying we're gonna get, the left back, the striker, and the right winger, I'll be happy. And I think the squad is big enough. And we haven't even talked about where's Mikey Moore gonna play. Is he gonna play? Is he gonna be loaned out? If Alfie Devine, who's very, very highly rated by Brian, a friend of ours, who spoke highly of him, and I speak highly of him. Alfie Devine has a big future at the club. And where are these guys going to play? There's plenty of room for these guys to play. And they need to be put in a position where the young guys are itching to take a position from the experienced guys. That's what I want to see. I want to see Dorrington back again. I want to see Donnelly, who I saw on Instagram follows you. So if he hears this, Donnelly, I think Donnelly has a big future at the club, and I'm a massive fan of his. And I really hope he fights for that position and he fights for that shirt, because that's what I want to see. I want to see this guy take the place from the guy. You know what I mean? I want to see him fight for the place, and the 50 million player make him look like a fool because he cost us nothing, and him take his position. I want to see competition within the club. That's what I want to see. If we spend 70 million on a player or one cost us nothing, I mean, these players, they train and they train. And at the end of the day, let's say at the end of the day, right, these players, they're all capable of being really, really good for Spurs. And if one costs 60 million and gets the fans excited, and if one costs nothing, at the end of the day, they can produce the same outcome if with the right training and coaching. I mean, Harry Kane cost us nothing. Nothing. He came from the squad. Just because he was there at the right moment and there was the right pathway for him, he was able to develop. I mean, famously, he was going to sell him, Levy. Levy was going to sell him. And you start to think, if we don't have this Europa League this season, some players won't get the chance. And we won't see what they're capable of. For example,
I think most fans would have sold Harry Kane.
Yeah, most fans would have sold him. And I saw his debut, and I believe he missed the pen or something like that against Hearts, if I remember correctly. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, he missed the penalty, and most of us, I think my dad said to me, "He's shit, get him off." And most of us would have given up on him, and Levy famously wanted to sell him. But there was a pathway for him to play at the right moment, at the right time. And the rest is history, and he never came out the team. So you have to think, some of these players with the right pathway can fight for the spot and can prevent the club 50, 60 million and be world class. I mean, if you're a Spurs fan and you're 18 years old and you play for the club, I mean, wouldn't you just absolutely, eat up every single blade of grass if you can? I mean, Chris, you've played at the stadium, and you played. I remember you injured your fingers because you were a goalkeeper, and you wouldn't let a goal go in because you were playing in a Tottenham kit, representing in a way your club.
Giving your all on the pitch. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what you would do. And
yeah.
And when I see Alfie Devine, Dorrington, I see all of them, and Donnelly, I think, and it's like I'm living my dream through them, because I think he's a Spurs fan and he's playing for the club, and he's 18 and he's good, and I just think he's living the dream. This kid, he has to fight for it, and he has to be given a chance. If he plays, let's say, in the Europa League and he scores a goal, and then you build on that, the excitement builds up on that, then all of a sudden we're all talking about Donnelly and we forget about signings. And it's one of these players is going to go through that. I don't know which one, but the club has enough talent in there where they're going to explode. It's happened before. We've had Gareth Bale. The club, in a way, we've had absolutely world-class players at this football club. I remember crying when we sold Gareth Bale and thinking we're never going to have a player like him again. Never. And we do. We get players. We get world-class players. We sign them when they're young, and they will explode, and we'll get excited over one of these kids. And I think we've seen enough in the preseason where we think some of them can do it. I think Bergvall right now is slightly ahead of all of them. I think I'd love to hear what you have to say about Lucas Bergvall, because in my opinion, I think he could take Maddison's position by the end of the season.
Well, Maddison really needs to step up his game, Melvyn. That is another issue for me. After his injury, he's come back and didn't really deliver the goods, and of course didn't go to Euro 2024, which I think was the right decision. I could see that coming. Lucas Bergvall, I want to see obviously a lot more of him, but yeah, a very, very exciting talent for the future. And I really praise the club for going out identifying all of this top talent. And you might laugh, Melvyn, on this stream by a couple of people on their comments coming in, and there are hundreds and thousands of comments coming in. So thank you so much for all of your comments. A few people have called me grumpy tonight. But I just don't want to see the club stand still. I want us to show the ambition. I want us to just go to that next step. And so, if my grumpiness comes across, or my frustration comes across as grumpy, then I apologise. But as I've said, we all want the same thing. We all want success. And I just feel like, in every single transfer window, you have to always strengthen. You have to always add and offload players as well, which, again, the club have done extremely well. Jack writes here, Melvyn, would you prefer Chiesa, Neto, or someone else on the right?
It's tricky because Chiesa for Juve, he was inconsistent this season. I spoke to a Juve fan and told him, what do you think about Chiesa? And he said he's not been the same since the injury, but it's been his first season back. So he's kind of like in the same waters Bentancur is. If he didn't have the ACL, and we all saw what he did at the Euros, and unfortunately England suffered because they lost the final to Italy. But Chiesa is a big talent, and you don't know if he's going to recoup, the speed. But I'll tell you this: Italian players are very, very good technically, and they have very, very good footballing IQ. I mean, the players we picked up from Italy that learned their trade in Italy. If you think Bentancur, Kulusevski, Dragusin, Romero, Udogi, Vicario, these are all Paratici signings. And Paratici, who I've mentioned many times, and I'm a massive fan of. And I think, in my opinion, this is his doing. Like, not Chiesa, I mean Spurs. I mean, this, how he's building this club, how he's speaking to Levy, and I think it's more of a consultancy role now. I think Paratici was part of Juventus when they won 10 leagues in a row. I mean, that's no joke to win 10 leagues in a row. He knows what it takes to be at a winning club. And he also knows what it takes to bring in massive signings. He was famously part of the deal that brought Ronaldo to Juventus. So I think he also said a couple of quotes which I believe he goes by. So one of them where he said, sometimes it's better to spend a little bit more money and get the signing you want than rather fall short and end up without the player. And I feel the club has done that from time to time. I remember when Pedro Porro was a very, very difficult signing to do, and everyone wanted Pedro Porro, and in the last second, Sporting Lisbon wanted more money, and finally we made it happen. And in football, there's a lot of moving parts to a signing. So I think I went off a bit. I don't even remember what question you asked me.
Melvyn, Aidan writes here, Chris, what do you want from this window? And Poppy and the Princess writes here, do you think the quality is out there for Spurs to purchase? Except for the youth, I'm thinking that many of the players mentioned in recent weeks are the best, third or fourth best options. Now, we know that Eze is out there. We know that if Spurs went with the money, spent the money, we know that Eze would be a Spurs player. We know that we could go and sign Ivan Toney. We know that he is now in his last 12 months of his contract. At the start of the window, and I've said this before, at the start of the window, if someone said, do you want to sign Ivan Toney? I would have said no. After seeing him be that impact player for England at the Euros, the way that he is, and when you look at him in more detail, his ability in front of goal, scoring inside the box, outside the box, set pieces, penalties, and so on, I think that Ivan Toney would be an exceptional signing for Spurs. I believe that Eze would be an exceptional signing for Spurs. And if you said £60 million on Eze and £40 million on Ivan Toney, it's interesting because Meaty444 half an hour ago on one of my latest videos that I posted said, what's happened to the Harry Kane money? So going out and spending £100 million on two players This is exactly what I mean, Melvyn, right? I'd be sitting here. This would be a completely different podcast. I'd be raving about our chances of winning a trophy by having 2 impact players in this squad. Someone like Ivan Toney, someone like Eze walking through that door. Can you imagine the lift that it would give Ange Postecoglou? Can you imagine the lift it would give that whole Tottenham Hotspur stadium? And then talking about all of the youngsters, talking about all that talent coming through. That's what I mean by having that impact. Those 2 impact signings coming in and thinking, and then everyone's going to be thinking, well, where are they going to play? Where are they going to be fitting in? What a fantastic situation to be in. Ange Postecoglou, I tell you, would be super happy with the transfer window, given someone like that, 2 players walking through the door. That's exactly what I mean about the impact, and that's exactly what I expected from this window. Because when a manager or a head coach comes out and says so many times, not even Jose or Antonio Conte coming to Tottenham saying, we're going to win the league, we want to be number 1. Not even them 2 who had been there, done it, got the T-shirt. Not even them 2 ever said, we want to be number 1 at Tottenham, because perhaps they thought that it might not be possible. They tried to build something to try and win a trophy. But when Ange Postecoglou, music to my ears as a Spurs fan, when Ange Postecoglou comes out and says, we want to be number 1, I think that's absolutely fantastic. But it's about now giving him the tools to be able to do that. Eze and Toney would be those players to get everyone excited. And I think that a lot of pundits, I think a lot of fans, opposition fans, they'd be thinking, wow, Tottenham are a force. Tottenham will be a force next year. Do you agree?
I do agree to a certain point. I agree that we need a striker and a winger. I think Toney could do a job, but do you think Toney is right fit for the club? With all the reports, I mean, no one has bid for him. Everyone knows he's
Melvyn, absolutely. That is a point I've raised on the podcast on a number of occasions. I think as a player, as a footballer, he is perfect.
Yeah, but why isn't Arsenal need a striker? Why haven't they bid for him? United bought a striker. They bought Xerxes from Atalanta, who I liked. Why didn't United bid for him? They wanted a striker as well. They know he's in his last year of his contract. They know he's good. They know he's English. They know he's homegrown. They know they could have bought him for 40 million, 45 million. Yes, he was at the Euros, but no one's bid for him. Why?
I personally think that Ivan Toney will end up moving from Brentford to another Premier League club, but I think it will be near to or even on the 30th of August. I think that they will leave it to the very last minute because they will test Brentford's resolve with a cheeky offer, and Brentford will probably want to cash in. If they got it done a couple of days before, it will then give Brentford the time to spend that money in time to get a replacement in. But I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Ivan Toney move from Brentford before the deadline.
I think Tottenham know that they can explore other options, and he's there as a fall guy. Let's say it doesn't work out with Solanke and they want 65 million up front, or it's nothing. And Levy will negotiate, try to explore and exhaust every single option. And then there's Toney. So I think he's being held there, let's say as a backup, a pretty good backup, if I say, because he's a quality player, he's Premier League experience. And between him and Solanke, it's like saying, oh, I don't know, do you want sirloin steak or do you want ribeye? At the end of the day, it's pretty much the same thing. It's like they're a quality striker, 20 goal a season striker. I mean, at the end of the season, going for one instead of the other is not gonna, for example, cost us not finishing in the Champions League. I think it's an easy decision where you say, if you bring either or, we're still gonna be, challenging for top four, and they're the right fit. They're both quite similar players. Well, one is slightly older than the other. One made it into the Euro squad and had an impact. So you have to think maybe Ivan Toney is a little bit, higher. Then you have to Then there's the gambling stuff that happened where doesn't bother me at all, but people will mention it.
I know some people probably won't like this, but I will give a positive to signing Dominic Solanke. He is Premier League proven, and I feel like he is a less of a risk. And I'm not by far saying that Dominic Solanke is on my number one list. Certainly not. And I feel a little bit underwhelmed by the potential signing of him. However, he does have Premier League experience. He did score a hatful of goals last season, and he is probably less of a risk of someone who hasn't played in the Premier League and has played in, one of Europe's, leagues. Because, Melvyn, we have seen on a number of occasions how many European players have come to the Premier League and they have been a complete flop. I know we're not sitting here, raving saying, yes, let's sign Ivan Toney. This is going to be fantastic. Dominic Solanke is going to be fantastic. But another comment came in a minute ago saying if we got Solanke and Toney, it would be a great window. I agree. I agree with that statement because, again, what I said earlier a couple of minutes ago, it does then give us options. And I do believe that we need the options, especially in that final third. And that's probably what surprises me a little bit more, that we haven't done business in that final third, because Ange, people think I'm grumpy and people think I'm moaning about it, but Ange went on about it constantly, week after week, month after month last season, about there is so much more growth to happen in that final third. And he also said during pre-season that is definitely an area where we need to strengthen. So that is definitely an area where we need to look at. Melvyn, as you can see, there are hundreds and thousands of comments coming in. As you said earlier, you said the words, what I want to talk about is, what haven't we covered yet that you want to say?
I don't know, because what I want to say is where I think the club is going with this. I think we're building a really, really strong base, a foundation of players, like a group of young guys. If you look at the average squad, the average age of the squad, there's a handful of 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds. I think the oldest two players are, Ben Davies, who you could say he's on the way out, Heung-min Son, who's 32, and Cuti Romero, who's 25, and Bentancur, I think, is 26. But the rest are 22, 21, 19, 20, 18, 16. I mean, we have players on loan. We have Vuskovic on loan, and the new Korean lad, who I'm still learning how to say his name. I mean, I think the club's direction, I don't know whose idea it was, if it's Paratici, if it's Daniel Levy, if it's Lang, if it's along with Postecoglou. It's like we're building a really, really strong foundation for the future. And these young guys, if they're there for they could be there for the next 10 years and still be, let's say, Archie Gray. Archie Gray can be at Spurs for 10 years and still be 28. You know what I mean? It's like he could have 10 seasons under his belt, 10 Premier League experience, and still haven't even hit his peak yet. That's how young these guys have been scouted. That's how young these guys have been. That's why Postecoglou, I think, wants to build a winning. I think he wants to change a few things at the club that he didn't like last season. I don't think the media takes him seriously. I think he gets asked questions because he's funny, but when I say Postecoglou, I say Alex Ferguson. I honestly say Alex Ferguson, with the way he speaks, with the way he talks, and hopefully the way he wants to transform the club. I honestly see Alex Ferguson in him. He has that vibe of the players fear him, but they respect him, but they want to do everything it takes to win for him at the same time. But most importantly, they fear him. And
Melvyn, do you think that Ange Postecoglou will get the time and the patience from, one, the board, and two, the fans? Because it is fair to say there are still a lot of people very critical about the way that Ange sets up in games. For example, if Spurs we saw last season us unbeaten after 10 games, sitting top of the Premier League. I know it didn't mean a lot, but it felt a lot to us as Spurs fans because we felt like we'd got that style back. It felt like we'd got that feeling back of feeling good about watching Tottenham again. But this coming season, of course, we start away at Leicester. Imagine after 10 games, perhaps we win 3 or 4, we draw a couple and we lose the rest. How do you think the fans will feel at that point? Do you think that the fans will stay with Ange and be patient with him?
My opinion, right? I don't think this season will be much different than last season. I think we'll improve in certain aspects, but I think it's gonna be nearly the same. It's not gonna be Ange Ball 2.0 yet, but it might be Ange Ball 1.2, if you know what I mean. It's not gonna be 2, it's gonna be 0.2. It's gonna be nearly the same. We won't have the same exact problems, but we're still in the same phase. And I personally think the project will take time. And when I say time, not one transfer window, not 2, not one season, 2. It takes time. And you will see from one season to another improvement. And I think you will see this season improvement, but not to the extent I think Spurs fans expect. I think people expect we're going to be all of a sudden. If you see the trajectory of when Liverpool won the league, they finished 8th, 5th, and then 2nd, and then 1st. It doesn't work. You go from 8th to 5th to 1st. And when Pochettino was here, some of the best football I've seen, Pochettino finished, I believe, 5th, 3rd, 2nd, 3rd, or 2nd, something like that. But it didn't go straight to 1st. There's season on season building and building. It's not going to go from 5th to champions. It's going to go from 5th to 4th, maybe back to 5th.
But Melvyn, the squad was a lot better then to what it is now.
But when you think of what Pochettino started with, we're miles ahead. We're not the same football club. I mean, when have you ever seen? We're not the same football club we were when Pochettino was here. We're not. When have you ever seen a football player reject Barcelona to come to Spurs? When? Name one. Name one football player that rejected Bayern Munich to come to Spurs. We're not the same football club. We're an attractive football club that was run poorly for 3-4 years. We brought in Jose Mourinho and Conte, who I think are world-class managers, but if you look at the squads they had, they were shit. We've been unlucky with certain things. COVID fucked us up massively. Because if you think we had no money for a few years, how many seasons have we had? I'll give you this. Tell me this. How many seasons have we had? A manager in his second season, we've had Champions League football, and we didn't change managers the next season. This is the first season we're going to have another manager, and we kept him. It's usually we've swapped how many managers? 8 or 9 in the last. We finally have stability again. We have a foundation again. We're finally building again, using that revenue that people are angry about because the club is making money. We're making money. We're making so much money that we're comfortable, that we don't have to look at financial fair play. We don't have to look at any of that. We don't have to worry. We don't have to sell our best players to fund anything. Yes, Harry Kane left, but we kept him for 10 years. We took the best of Harry Kane.
But that's what's frustrating a lot of people, Melvyn, the fact that Spurs fans want that money spent.
Yeah, we were unlucky, I think, because we came at the end of a project under Pochettino, and the club all of a sudden got impatient, and we wanted Jose, and we wanted to win now, and then we bought him players to try to win now, and we had no money because the stadium wasn't open, and then we brought in Conte, who's a very good football manager, but Conte, he's very stubborn, and he has his ways. And we did win under Conte. We beat Arsenal at home 3-0. I was there. One of the best moments I've ever seen in the stadium. I thought the roof was going to lift off. We've had good moments with bad squads. But if you think at that moment when we beat Arsenal 3-0, and we destroyed them, who was on the way up and who was on the way down? We thought we would be on the way up, but it was the other way around, because they bought players that were still young, and they developed the system, and they were still early in their project.
And that is another frustration. The fact that we are miles apart at the moment.
Yeah, but they were patient. What year was that under Conte? That was, I think, Arteta's third season, I believe. And he finished 8th again. And look where it got him. Now they're challenging for the league. That's where I fear. I fear Arsenal could win the league. And I personally want Tottenham to do everything in their power to try to be the best, so we can stop them winning for the league and we can win it before them. Because that's my biggest fear. I think they can possibly win it. And City are not the same beast they used to be. They used to buy any player they want. And with financial fair play, the leveling field is becoming more flat, let's say. And we're competing with these teams now. We're getting targets. Yeah, we're not spending. We're still early in our project. Next season, when we don't have to remove any deadwood and we don't have to take any cuts, and we can have Champions League money, it will be much more straightforward. We can pay as a upfront. We keep saying these things. I know we say patience is key, but in my opinion, trust the process. Remember, you were part of the early phases of Postecoglou. I'm happy I saw Mikey Moore's debut, because I think he's going to be a big player. I can say I saw his debut, and I saw the beginning of Postecoglou. And even if Postecoglou isn't the right manager for us, who I think he is, I think there's foundations at this football club to make us successful. The recruitment is a lot better. If you look at the signings we made for Pochettino, I looked them up today and I was going through them, and we used to make one good signing and 5 terrible ones. Nkudu, Jensen, these are the names I'm putting. And these are signings we made for Pochettino to improve. Jensen and Nkudu. And then we used to make one good one. We used to have, for example, the best transfer window I saw was when we got Toby, Wanyama, and I think there was another one, maybe Lorente or something like that. It's rare we have a transfer window when you have 3 perfect signings that slot in, that improve you. And last season, I feel, was one of them. Van de Ven, Vicario, and Udogis came straight in and improved us immediately. Yeah, immediately, and we were much better. And I feel
that's exactly my point, though, Melvyn. If we were to get 2 or 3 players like that who can instantly improve us, we could go places.
Solanke improves us, makes us a much better team. Last season, we played half of it without Richarlison, and Solanke is better than Richarlison, and people are upset. I don't know why. Bournemouth fans are telling us he's great.
Yeah. Melvyn, let's end on this. Akram Hamza, thanks for posting this a couple of times. I have seen this comment flash up, but Melvyn was talking for far too long, so I couldn't bring it on. Chris, do you think that we might throw the league and go to win the Europa League? Because we need to win something. Now, Melvyn, I believe that Spurs would never throw the league. The league is always more important to the football club. Of course, the trophies are very important to the fans. Let's face it, we haven't won a European trophy since '84, haven't won an FA Cup since '91, haven't won a League Cup since 2008, and haven't won a league since 1961. The trophies are way, way overdue. But we are in the Europa League. You're talking about having a very exciting young squad. I'm sure that the young players and development players will get a lot of game time in the Europa League. How are you feeling ahead of the season in the Europa League? Because I've said on this channel many, many times, and it used to frustrate me, even when we played in the Europa League under Mauricio Pochettino, and I love Poch at Spurs, as you know. It used to frustrate me sometimes that he'd always worry about that league game on Sunday and then mix the team up, wouldn't go, the strongest team as possible on the Thursday because he's always thinking about that game on the Sunday. How do you think Ange will approach the Europa League this season, bearing in mind that we have got 8 games in the group stages and they are against different teams? We do not play the same team at home and away this year. It is a completely new format, for those of you who didn't know that. How do you think that Ange will approach this competition, bearing in mind he now knows how disappointed a lot of us were, or most of us were, when he made 10 changes against Fulham and we went out in the League Cup last August?
I think it's going to be interesting what he does this season. I mean, I keep an eye out for the starting lineup I focus on that before a game and I see what's Postecoglou going to do. And sometimes I try to write the lineup myself before he does it and see if I can think like him and see if I can guess what he's going to do. So I do it for Premier League games, Cup games, whatever. And it's going to be interesting, the first lineup, if he's going to go the full squad, the best team possible in the Europa League. The same with the League Cup. I mean, he doesn't have to see any players now. Like last season, he had the excuse, I want to see this player play. I want to see this player play before the window shuts. And he doesn't have that this season. I think he will go the strongest team, maybe rotating 1 or 2, not more than 1 or 2. But I feel with the squad we have, there's enough quality on the bench where we're still competitive. I mean, it's the Europa League. It's not the Champions League. It's the Europa League. And the level of football won't be Bayern Munich. It won't be Real Madrid. It won't be AC Milan. It won't be these teams where if you take out one player, they're going to expose you. It will be, the quality will be high enough where if let's say you rest Romero for Dragozin and you put in Bergvall and then you rotate in Kulusevski and then that's enough. And then let's say you start Son and you bring him off after 60 minutes. Or you start Werner, who's experienced in the Champions League. I mean, he's won it, for God's sakes.
Mm.
So there's enough players in there where you substitute, because they all play the Postecoglou style. So, they all play the Postecoglou style. So I don't think the quality will drop enough where it influences the result very much. But I think it'll be interesting, the first lineup of Leicester and the first cup game, what it's going to be like. Those 2 things I'm going to keep an eye out, because the first lineup will be what he thinks is our best lineup. So if he starts Bergvall ahead of Maddison, for example, if he starts Archie Gray instead of Bissouma, that's what he thinks is our best. So, and it's also interesting if he does what he thinks will be the best for Spurs in the long term, or what's going to get him the win. Because I feel he never played Højbjerg in games. He never started him unless he absolutely had to. But I feel at times we could have used with him starting Højbjerg and resting one of the midfield players. So it depends what he's going to do, because I feel he does whatever is best long term. He doesn't do anything what's going to get him the win. I feel that's what Postecoglou does. He plays the team that's going to be the best team in the long term. That's why he kept playing Sarr, Bissouma. I mean, Bissouma started really well. Even Maddison, when Maddison was poor, he didn't play Lo Celso because he knew Lo Celso was going to be out the door. So he knew Maddison is here for the long term. I'll keep playing him until he finds his form again. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting what the lineups are going to be, the first few lineups.
Do you know, Melvyn, how interesting this lineup is against Fulham back in August in the League Cup? Forster in goal, Ben Davies, Van der Ven, Sanchez, Emerson, Højbjerg, Solomon, Skip, Lo Celso, Perisic, and Richarlison.
How many of them will be here? how many? It's like that lineup. How many will still be here? Not many.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not the same. We're not the same football club. Even Postecoglou said this. He said lots of players that were here in the pre-season last season, they're not here.
Yeah.
We're not the same. A lot. We've been gutted out, which is in my opinion one of the best things to happen. There's a scene in this famous film Moneyball, and they lose 3 of their best players, and all of a sudden it's about recruitment. And the guy said there's poor teams and there are rich teams and poor teams, and then there's 50 feet of crap, and then there's us. A famous, very funny quote. And I just think in my head, this is what's happening at Spurs when they're discussing transfers. It's like this sort of thing. And he said we lost these 3 big players, but what it does, it opens up a whole possibility of players to come in. And that's what I feel this transfer window has done. We've sold more than or loaned out with the loans. We've sent players away more than we've brought in. And I feel that opens up extremely exciting possibilities. And I think this season, with the 3 players we will bring in or could bring in, will be enough. But even the season after that, it still opens the door. There's 31 million worth of wages that have been shaved off. So that leaves a massive door open. There's a massive door open. And if we get Champions League football, then that door is even wider, because then you can expand to big clubs and try to take, players from them.
Melvyn, I've got 2 last questions for you. How many signings do you think we need? And how many signings do you think we will get?
I think we need 2.
You think we only need 2 signings?
For this season, because I think I've accepted that this season we could potentially only get as high as 4th. So
forget what you think we'll get. The question is, what do you think we need? Because I think we need 6 players.
No, I don't know. I say we would need 3 and we'll get in 3. So if you say we need a left back, we need a striker.
I think we'll get 3. Yeah.
So I would be happy with 3, but I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden something happens and we're stuck with 2. And then
look, I was being realistic. Poppy and the Princess says we need 10. There you go.
Where would you say we need another player, Chris, personally for you?
2 number 9 straight away.
2 number 9. So you, in your head, you've already said Richarlison is sold.
I think he's going to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he, very similar to Lo Celso, I think that Ange probably feels like he is very wastefully in front of goal. Of course, injury problems. I feel like he hasn't been that great fit at the football club. I think it's going to probably be best for him and the club that he moves on. So I do think he'll go.
Where I'm at with Richarlison, I think if we keep him for one more season, I don't think it would hurt his value a lot. And I think if Saudi come in for him next season, let's say they offer us 45 million or 50 million this season, I think we can get the same amount of money next season for him, because he still holds the same name, the same profile. I think that's why Saudi want him, because he's Brazilian. They're trying to increase the Brazilian market. That's why they're signing Casemiro and all these Brazilians. So if we keep him for one season and then we sell him next season, I think he still retains most of his value.
Melvyn, as per usual, you've been a great guest. Thank you so much for coming on and answering all of the viewers and listeners' questions and going through all of their comments. I cannot thank all of the viewers and listeners for all of your comments and questions. You've been absolutely fantastic. We've had thousands in this week, so please do keep them coming. We've got another one of these coming up on Thursday evening when Craig Dearman will be joining me. as we'll be talking about more Tottenham Hotspur transfer news, etc. Melvyn, where can people find you on social media, and what are you up to at the moment, and how is the weather in Malta?
The weather is very hot. It's almost too hot at times. I mean, the AC is on, and it's a very hot country. And one thing we didn't mention is the Malta Cup, which could be one of the trophy that Harry Kane might lift, or could be one of the trophies that will stay.
Whoever lifts that trophy, Melvyn, is going to get banter, whether it's Tottenham or whether it's Harry Kane.
Okay, if anyone at Spurs is watching this, can I be the one to present the trophy? I'll leave my I'll leave my email in the comments and see if we can make that happen.
But you're not even coming to the game, are
you? I was thinking about it, but I was thinking I'd rather come for a Premier League game than a friendly. But
yeah,
I because for me, coming for a friendly, I usually come once or twice a year, as you know, and I see you and all the guys from the podcast, and so I try to make it either a team I haven't seen, so or a derby, a London derby, but tickets nowadays are so difficult to get, and it's a special occasion to watch Spurs nowadays, and I'm jealous of the people who have season tickets and who can go to the stadium regularly, and for me it's a treat to watch Spurs, so I try to come as much as I can. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Melvyn Malta, and I'm trying to get some Malta Spurs fans together, and I don't think we've mentioned this yet, but I'm trying to get James Black to come and perform here for one of the away games, and I'm trying to generate some interest, and I've spoken to some guys who are organizing events with him, and I'm speaking to him, and we're trying to get him for the Brighton game at home in October, and we're trying to get some Spurs Malta fans to get together, and because life goes by so fast and it's difficult for us to meet, and even Spurs fans from England tend to come to Malta, and I'm just trying to get the word out there. So
Melvyn, you've also made it very difficult for the likes of me and everyone else at the podcast to come to your wedding when you're getting married on the opening weekend of the Premier League season next year.
Yeah. I told my wife, I said, Chris doesn't miss games. He goes to all of them. So I'm hoping it'll be an away game. But you go to the away games as well. So
of course I do, yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we're playing, of course, our first game this season on a Monday night. Whether that can happen again, and whether we can make your wedding, we will certainly try our best to be out there and get many Tottenham logos at your wedding next summer. It'd be great. Melvyn, let's end with this last question. Dark B, and you don't need to answer it. It's just a little bit for fun. Which is better, the Audi Cup or the Malta Cup? I'll let all of the viewers answer that one in the comments. Melvyn, thank you so much for joining me. Did you give your X account?
Yeah, it's there. It's Melvyn Malta, and follow me. I usually follow back because I usually follow all Spurs fans. So
fantastic. Well, thank you for watching, everyone. Thanks for listening, and I'm absolutely delighted to say that we are nearly at 122,000 subscribers now, which is absolutely incredible. So thank you so much for all of your incredible support. And 23 days left of the transfer window. Let's hope it is a very, very busy next 23 days, next 3 weeks for Tottenham Hotspur in terms of incomings. And we will be back very soon with another edition of the Spurs Chat Podcast. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.